It was heartbreak for the Stormers in front of a sellout crowd at the Cape Town Stadium as their opponents, Munster, showered in champagne after walking away with this season's United Rugby Championship trophy. To chat about that story and other rugby-related matters, I'm still joined in studio by Mahlatse, and on Zoom we have Gavin, who's struggling with his tripod there, Gavin Rich, as well as Smoo Mjigedi, who's going to join us a bit later on. I think he's probably also maybe feeding the babies. Smoo had 2 kids the first time. Yeah. Oof, I don't envy him. If you like kids, no offense. But let's start with you, Gavin. Where are you joining us from? Are you in Cape Town?
Yeah, I'm actually at the Kate. I'm at the Blue Peter Hotel in Blouberg. I was out for a few drinks. It's been a long season.
And they don't sell tripods.
I'm with the URC. I'm with the URC people actually. I've got a couple of the people from the URC management, and we're having a few drinks and a couple of things to eat. So yes, it's good fun.
I thought I recognized the lady who was standing next to you there. Mahlatse and I were debating, is that who we think it is? But anyway, It was quite a tricky win for Munster, who had to win away in the quarterfinals, semi-finals, as well as a final. So why did they do so well? What do you attribute this to?
I think Annika Meyer, the former Springbok coach, used to always talk about when you rub coal together, you end up with a diamond. And I think that it was very much a sort of case of that, where the attrition that Munster faced towards the end of their season, they were in a situation where they needed at one stage just to win to make it into the Champions Cup, to make it into the knockout rounds, and they weren't too confident of that. And so quite a long time ago, and it was around about when, after the Sharks knocked them out of the Heineken Champions Cup, they went on to a knockout footing in the URC. And I think that was really it, that they've been on a knockout footing since, I'm trying to remember when that Sharks game was again in the Heineken Champions Cup. I remember I was in the Drakensberg. It was the beginning of March. The beginning of April. So they've been on a knockout footing since the beginning of April. And I think that really is it, that they haven't had any sort of games since then that weren't meaningful, that weren't almost like a sort of quasi sort of knockout fixture. And they just basically became really mentally tough because of every game being a match that they had to win, or there was no tomorrow. So that's what happened. I mean, their focus was on away games. They were always living on the edge.
Yeah. Smoo, I don't know if you can hear me. You also seem to be on the road. Are you also in your car? Are you driving? What's happening? You're muted, Smoo. You need to press the unmute button on your phone. No, go back. It's like we need to teach all guys new tricks here. What is happening with the two of you? Stand still.
Sorry, my mute button disappeared as soon as I got the right camera angle. So it was a choice between camera angle or remaining on mute.
Okay, just behave. Yeah. So keep it unmuted, but just behave until I'm talking to you. So I don't know if you heard what Gavin was talking about, but with Munster. But let's go to the Stormers now. You know, they've had a lot of off-the-field issues, if I should put it like that, management, administration, all of that. But John Dobson has been able to lead this team the last 2 years to 2 finals. Despite last night's results, why do you believe they have such good structures there? And, why is this an incredible feat?
Look, I think the fact that the Stormers have hosted 2 finals, people forget the turmoil that's happened behind the scenes at Western Province Rugby. And I think nobody's obviously going to give the Stormers a free pass from losing a game from a position when they could have won it. But let's not forget that South African budgets are still well below Irish, Scottish, and Italian and Welsh budgets. Let's not forget that Western Province are under administration. Let's not forget that every single season the Stormers' best players get taken away. Warwick Helland last season, and now Stephen Kitsoff is also on his way. They've had Evan Roos out for majority of the season. Yeah. They've also had Springbok player management, players out, and sure enough, Munster have done very, very well to get where they are, fighting week on week just to make the playoffs. But I have to commend the Stormers for being in this position 2 years in a row, taking the URC final and bringing it to South Africa 2 years in a row. I mean, that is an incredible feat. I mean, look at Leinster. Leinster haven't even made the final, and we talk about them as the best sort of organization in rugby in this competition at the very least. So I think it's still commendable. I think the guys will be down on their luck, but I think John Dobson has done an amazing job turning around the careers of Hachiva Dynamani, Mani Libok, bringing the best out of Damien Willemse, who a lot of Stormers coaches have not been able to nail down, getting guys like Dan du Plessis to chip in. Ruan now came from sevens and has become brilliant in 15s. And for a while, they didn't even have a second row. You know, they had to bring in Ruben van Heerden on loan. So this has been a great effort from the Stormers, and I think they can hold their heads up high.
Yeah, Mahlatse, he talks about Mani Libok. He's probably a player that divides a lot of opinion in this country as far as, is he a Bok? Is he? Well, is he? Yeah, and if so, where do you place him? First, third, second for the World Cup?
Well, yeah, as to the picking order for the World Cup, it's going to be very difficult. I mean, for somebody to dislodge Henry Pollard, for example. I think he has been our number one now for the last while. But, you know, Mani has done himself a lot of favors, you know. He will be in the discussions definitely for the technical team when they do the preparations for the World Cup. And he has had a very, very good season. He's a guy who came to the Bulls and never really got a look in. And, you know, he needed somebody who can show him love, as they say in sports. You know, and he has performed, you know, admirably, very, very well. And you know, with you know, the situation that is there at the box in terms of the kicking positions, I think he will you know, have a shout. Elton Janjis doesn't look like he's somebody who you know, the selectors will continue looking at his direction, and he's sitting at a very, very you know, critical position where you know, he will definitely get opportunities going forward to challenge Andre Pollard going forward. Yeah.
So, as he's your second pick going to the World Cup.
He will definitely be my second pick going to the World Cup, you know, given injuries, form, and all those kinds of things. I think with the confidence that he's on now, he's a guy who maybe we can rock up at the semi-final or quarter-final, and he's available, he's picked. He can definitely step up to the plate and play in big matches like that, because he has done that at a sort of a URC level up to so far now. Yeah,
I'm sure the two gentlemen have words on that, but I'm going to let you guys not answer the Mani Libok question. But instead, Gavin, I'm going to ask you about the Sharks. They've had as much quality, if not better quality, than the Stormers and the Bulls this season, but they've been misfiring. What's gone wrong in Durban?
I think at the end of the day, Kate, I think there's truth in that old saying that if you have money, you can buy talent, but you're not necessarily able to buy culture. And I say that with great respect to Neil Powell, who took over the job this year of coach after Sean Everett was relieved of the job. He never had a pre-season. Neil Powell was still coaching the Springbok Sevens team when the URC season started. So he never had a chance to really sort of get to know the players and to get into the job and actually to guide them through a pre-season. So I think the Sharks are sort of a bit of an anomaly at the moment, because they have lacked possibly direction in their coaching. I do think that they've had funnily enough, Joey Mangala has done a brilliant job at Currie Cup level. I think that their Currie Cup team's really been flying. A lot of people keep telling me, no, well, the problem with the Sharks is they've got the top echelon of players is brilliant. They've got Springboks, but when those guys are playing, they don't have any talent. I disagree with that. I think that they've got plenty of talent, but they've lacked the direction and they've lacked the culture. And I think when John Plumtree comes in June, in early July, I think he will change that. He's a very experienced coach. It's no poor reflection on the guys who have been there before. As I say, they were given a difficult job, because I don't think that the Sharks hierarchy really sort of thought through this very well. They sort of thought, we've got money, we can buy the Sia Khaleesi's and we can buy the Eben Etzebeths and everything will come right. But it doesn't work like that, because much of the United Rugby Championship campaign is played under strength. So you don't have your Springboks for that. And that's really where the Sharks have gone wrong. Their biggest problem this year has been that they haven't actually qualified for next year's Heineken Champions Cup. And that's a huge blow for a franchise like the Sharks.
Yeah, sounds like money can't buy you happiness, Swu. I mean, I'd like to test that theory myself. But let's talk about the Bulls. It looks like 2009 all over again. What's gone wrong there in that franchise?
The Bulls are even bigger anomaly than the Sharks, I think, because you kind of don't get why they can't get it going, especially when it comes to this international franchise competition. Because when Jake White got together that team in 2020, they really blew the local competition out of the water, obviously winning what was Super Rugby Unlocked and the local Curry Cups, both of them until 2021, and the Rainbow Cup, the precursor to the URC. They beat everybody in South Africa, obviously losing to Benetton in Italy. You kind of got the sense that maybe building towards the future, the Bulls could be the force of South African rugby. I can't tell you what exactly tripped them up. I don't know. They did fill their squad with sort of player depth on paper, but it doesn't seem like it's kind of worked in their favor. They brought a lot of, former Springbok stars, guys like Lionel Mapu, Nizam Carr. They brought guys like Harold Foster, and I mean, they even had Ruan Combring at some point before he left and went back to the farm. And you kind of think that maybe their recruitment strategy was a bit all over the show, and maybe they could have invested more in younger talents, like we saw with Kanan Moody and Kurtley Arendse coming through. So I think for them, they had a formula that worked up until a certain point, and then it stopped working completely. Then this season they changed tact altogether. Then they tried to rotate out of the Champions Cup during the December sort of January period, which was very taxing. And it was a strategy that blew up in Jake White's face, because it meant players just they weren't able to perform in either URC or Champions Cup. And he was left at a stage where he didn't know where to play his best team now, because both tournaments seemed to be slipping out of his fingers. And the Curry Cup started going by the wayside during a period of 10 losses in all competitions. So I think they had too many balls that were juggling in the air. The change of coaching as well, which I think was poorly managed, giving Edgar Marutlule, a young coach, full reins, but not giving him the full backing, and then yanking him out as soon as things started going wrong. So I feel like the season has been really a poorly managed season from the top at the Bulls.
Mahlatse, local teams, which is Stormers, Lions, all the other unions playing in the north for the last 2 years, has it paid off? I mean, it's a World Cup here, so there's a lot of, the Northern Hemisphere competition comes into mind. But, has it paid off for South Africa, leaving Super Rugby?
Yeah, I think it has. And also this ties up with the fact that, the World Cup is in Europe. I think, conditions plays a very, very crucial role in elite sport. So, I think it has paid off in the competition. Most of the players, of course, that the guys are playing with week in, week out, they will face them against Ireland, France, and all those kind of things. So, and also, again, the critical issue of understanding the conditions of being in Europe. And, if in France, some of the teams have played there already. So, I think from a playing perspective, it was a good move to move there. And also, for the welfare of the players. I mean, going to Australia and New Zealand has always been an issue, and there's a lot of traveling there. If you've traveled to that part of the world, you can, even if you're not a player, just as a journalist, travel going all the way, coming back. It took a lot out of the players, and sometimes you also feel that the reason why our teams didn't consistently win, in that tournament was because of the fact that the teams were traveling. Of course, the other ones were coming here, but it was a bit tricky playing in that tournament. It was a good tournament then, but things have changed now, and I'm happy with where we are now. And also the issue of time differences. We're able to watch some of the bigger matches because of time differences, stuff like that. So overall, I'm quite happy that tournament. I mean, we've moved in that direction. I think also from a financial perspective, the teams are making a little bit of money, which also helps in terms of helping the players. So overall, I'm quite happy with the direction that we have taken, moving away from where we are to where we are now.
Gavin, you? Has playing in the North paid off?
Yeah, absolutely. I thought in the beginning that, I think to some extent South Africa missed New Zealand, just in the sense of the type of, I think we saw it to some extent, maybe in parts of the games that they played against, the All Blacks played against us in South Africa. But I think New Zealand have actually missed South Africa more than the other way around. They've missed the physicality. Australia don't really give them that. Sorry, I'm disappearing from the picture here. Australia don't really give them the same thing. So I think New Zealand have actually probably suffered more than anybody from South Africa leaving the competition. I agree with Rassie Erasmus that the URC gives more of a sort of proper rugby feel. The type of rugby that you play when you play international rugby, the type of rugby that you play when you play in a World Cup. The games are a bit tighter, but at the same time, I think that South Africa have added amazing things to the URC. And as I say, I've been sort of having supper with some of the URC people here tonight, and I think that the URC has improved incredibly just by having South Africa involved, and that the diversity of different game plans that you have to put up with as a coach and the player, and the different conditions that the players play. And I think that it's just been fantastic for the whole tournament, but to have South Africa in it. But it's particularly good for South Africa to be in a competition where I think that's going to get better and better. Remembering too, of course, that like the Champions Cup, which South Africa is also involved in, there's a lot of the sort of cross-pollination of ideas in the opposition teams, in the sense that unlike South Africa, who can't really afford it, a lot of them have almost like barbarians looks to them. I mean, the two players who were some of the players that were really influential for Munster yesterday weren't actually even Irishmen. Malachi Fekitoa at the back, R.G. Snyman when he came on, Jean Klein's also a former Stormers player. They've all got players in key positions that actually come from outside and who are world-class players. And I think that is actually one of the great benefits of URC and playing in Europe, is that you're not just playing against a team just made up of New Zealanders or a team just made up of Australians. You're playing against a team that's made up of a cross-pollination, as I say, of the world's different types of playing styles, and that's really, really good for every nation that's involved in the URC.
Oh, well, that's amazing. That's an interesting thought, because a lot of people talk about, when you talk about the United Rugby Championship, you always think about, has South Africa improved? But also, has the North improved for having South Africa? For having South Africans there, But after the break, we're going to expand this conversation with the gentleman. But this time around, we're going to look at the international teams, which is South Africa, of course, going into the Rugby World Cup after the break. Stay with us. You are watching Sports Live right here on SABC News. Welcome back. Well, this week, SA Director of Rugby, Rassie Erasmus and Springbok coach Jacques Nienaber made a rare public appearance where they dealt with a number of issues relating to the World Cup and their title defense. We maintained the same panel, but Kevin Hunt is still having issues with the tribal. Kevin, sit down. Kevin Rich, everybody, is coming through from Cape Town, where he's still enjoying a couple of beers, I think, with the guys from Munster, who are still celebrating their win yesterday. But Kevin, I'm going to start with you then. 2011, South Africa went in as defending champions. It's the same case right now, defending this title. What are the key areas that, what lessons have Rassie Erasmus and the gang learned from that time around, which can actually propel them to defending this title?
Well, funnily enough, they were both involved in that World Cup. I mean, Rassie was, if I remember correctly, the technical director of the team. Peter de Villiers had brought him in, and Jacques, of course, was the defence coach. So they probably would have learnt, for 2019 from that. There were mistakes made back in 2011. I think that there were a couple of players that might not have been quite where they were before. I think John Smith there was a whole John Smith and Bismarck du Plessis debate back then, if you remember correctly. John Smith was the Springbok captain, but most people probably felt that Bismarck du Plessis was possibly the better hooker at the time. Look, I mean, when we talk about 2011, it's very difficult to talk about it, Kate, without mentioning the role of one Bryce Lawrence in South Africa's exit from that World Cup. I think the Springboks were well on track in that particular World Cup. And then against Australia in Wellington in that quarterfinal, they came up against an absolute freak show when it came to the refereeing. And that can happen in any tournament. Let me tell you, I mean, well, I don't need to tell you. Everybody must know. Just when you're watching modern rugby, somebody can get a red card in the first minute for something that's absolutely pretty innocuous, and then suddenly the game's not, it's not set up as it was before the game was started. So it's very difficult to say what could be learned from 2011. It's the one thing that I would say, looking back at previous World Cups, if we go to 2015. And noting that Sia Khaleesi, who is a very important member, obviously, of the Springbok team and is the Springbok captain, in 2015, Heineke Meyer might have made a mistake with Jean de Villiers in the sense that he gave him a lot of time to get ready to play in that World Cup. And then when he did come in, he wasn't quite ready. And if I remember correctly, he ended up going home after about the third match, injured again. I think that was a mistake, and I think that Rassie and Jacques have rightly said that they're going to give Sia maximum opportunity to be ready, and I think that's correct. But I think when we get to latter part of August, or mid-August and later on, then they've got to be absolutely clear that he is going to be ready, because then it can be disruptive if you go to the World Cup and you're never sure whether the captain's ready or not. So if you're looking for lessons from the past, maybe that's the one I can refer to, and that's not 2011 team. I'm sorry, 11 team. That's not 2011. I'm talking about. That's 2015.
Yeah, that's an important point he makes, Sbu. Sia Khaleesi injured once again, going to a major tournament. But if I remember correctly, wasn't he wearing a brace on the team announcement for the last tournament? I could have sworn that Sia was injured with his knee again going to the last tournament. But anyway, how important is he?
He was.
Yeah, that team announcement was definitely wearing a knee brace, but he was the first player to walk out as a player that they announced for the tournament. So the importance of having a Sia Khaleesi in the tournament, what is it, Sbu? And also, does Gavin have a point with what happened with Jean de Villiers the last time?
I have to agree with Gavin in all the points that he's made, especially when you've got that question mark over your captaincy. I think the fundamental difference though between the John and Busy situation is that it's not a ability thing, and he doesn't have Sia doesn't really have a Bismarck like John Smith did, because Bismarck was a freak of nature. He was an unstoppable force, and that really kind of, I think, played in the mind of coaches a lot more than I think there's no player like Sia in the country at the moment, and what he does, there's no exact replica. So it will change how the Springboks play if he's not available. So you go either Marco van Staden, which is small, or you go big, in terms of using maybe a Franco Mostert as part of that back row. So it's the way the look and feel of the back row for the Springboks is going to be vastly different without Sia Khaleesi. But having said that, I think it's a real pity that Sia got hurt right before this World Cup, because he was fit throughout the season. He was playing some of his best rugby, if you count last year's international season, as well as some of the Sharks matches that he did play. So giving him the time is the right thing to do. But I also fear that, going into the last World Cup in 2019, Sia Khaleesi wasn't finishing matches. He was coming out in the 60th minute or even earlier sometimes. And I did feel that, it took a little bit away from the Springboks not having a captain last the full course. Of course, he was fit enough to play 80 minutes by last year, and we thought, okay, this is it. We'll see the best of Sia, and unfortunately, the knee injury happened. Last time out, you had a Flo Low who could kind of be, another sort of big instructor, but also a poacher on the floor. This time around, they're going to have to think and box very, very clever if Sia does make it, because then they're going to have to manage him again. Then you're looking at another 60-minute sort of performance from Sia. Is that going to be enough? Teams have gotten smarter. They know how to work around that. So I don't know how they're going to manage it this time around if Sia is fit, but not fit enough to last the course in the entire match. But as a leader, there's no doubt you obviously want him there to carry through this job.
Yeah. It talks about the importance of having someone like Franco Low the last time. Which other players, maybe this time around, Mahlezo, would you say Because Rassie was also talking about how there's a number of players who are knocking on the door for the World Cup, apart from Mani Libbok. Who else are you looking at?
Well, maybe before that, just to add on the SIA issue, I think also we need to be careful that we have to make absolutely sure that we're taking a fully fit SIA Kolisi to the World Cup, and as to how long they're prepared to wait to make sure that the guy has passed all the medical tests. I mean, I don't know, because like the guy said, you don't want to arrive at the World Cup with every journalist there asking questions about the fitness of the coach, because of the captain, because then it takes away a lot of the focus of what the guys are doing on the training pitch. So that's another issue. But I mean, I trust in Rassie and Jack. I think they will do what is best. They've been there before, as the guys have said that last time. There were issues around him in terms of his fitness and stuff like that. So that's, and again, the other issue is that if he doesn't make the World Cup, then who then becomes the captain? You have got Eben, you have got Lokanyo you have got Kitsi, Steven Kitsoff, senior guys who are part of the leadership group. Hunter Pollard can also raise his name. So from that point of view, I think if he doesn't make it, he will still be covered. But I just will implore that we really have to make sure that this guy is fully fit when he goes to a World Cup. And I'm sure I've been happy that some of the videos that he's been posting up, even though maybe there must be some pain somewhere, but he doesn't show that destined comfort when he's on the bike and doing all this other stuff that he's doing. So that gives me hope. But we have to tread carefully there as to make sure that all the boxes are ticked, so that when you get to the World Cup, no one is asking about the fitness of the guy, but we're just going to focus more on the rugby.
Yeah. I mean, the other focus, Gavin. I mean, Matlaza actually dodged my question there about other, about players who are probably going to make the squad if you're looking at the 35 that are going to take the World Cup. But we'll park that for a second. But Gavin, the other conversation that may be a distraction for the Springbok camp is the fact that the coach announced that he's not carrying on with his job after the World Cup. Good timing or bad timing?
I think it's good timing because, Kate, I remember Jake White, although admittedly the Springboks ended up winning that particular World Cup, but I remember there was a lot of speculation about Jake White back in 2007. There was talk of Jake possibly not continuing afterwards. I was speaking to Jake quite a lot during that World Cup, and he wasn't sure either. The players weren't sure, and I don't think that's a good situation to go into. I think if the Springbok coach isn't intending to carry on the next year, it is good for him to give the organisation a chance to get a replacement and let everybody know that this is, Jacques' last hurrah as the Springbok coach. And that, him and Rassie are sort of pretty much joined at the hip anyway. So they work together so well, and one is one covers for the other. No, I think the timing was good. I think that it gives Jacques an opportunity to clear his head. As he told us at the press conference last week, it gives him a chance to sort of like organise a flight for his Chihuahua, his pet dog, who he wants to have back with him in Ireland. Apparently it cost him 58,000 Rand to fly it out here from Munster when he came out here, and it seems to be bothering Jacques. So I think it's a good thing that Jacques is able to organise those things, organise his kids' school next year, set up a home in Leinster without having in the back of his mind that he's not sure whether he's going or not. He's made the decision, he's announced it. There's no speculation, no media speculation about his future. He can get on with the job of preparing the Springboks for the World Cup. And then the minute the World Cup's over, then he belongs to Leinster. Yeah, okay. Smoo, you're probably going to have the last say here, but who then? Who replaces him then? And what does South SA Rugby look for in the next coach? In trying to avoid the Alistair Coetzee situation, who excels, who did so well in other areas, but then dismally failed at the highest level of any coach. So what then should SA Rugby look for, and how do they equip that person who's going to take over from Jacques?
It's a very tricky question. I'm glad you raised the Alistair Coetzee point, because Alistair Coetzee took over and they immediately put handcuffs around his back by not allowing him to pick overseas-based players. We can't have a situation where the next coach doesn't have a level playing field. And we can't have a situation where we start from ground zero, whether we're still world champions or not. So there has to be some level of continuity. So it's a good thing that they've locked in their assistant coaches for a longer term. But it's also the other side of that coin is if you bring in someone new, let's say like a Johan Ackerman, then by keeping Stick and Deon Davids, you basically said that we can't have someone completely new. You have to pick from within your core.
Yeah.
What I think they will do is they'll have Rassie Erasmus carry the ship until 2025, and then one of Mzwandile Stick and Deon Davids is going to have to emerge as the guy who can stand on their own 2 feet. I think they're going to have those conversations throughout the course of those 2 years. It would be great if Rassie stayed on for up until 2027, so that
Gavin,
even when he hands over the reins, so that but there's still a bit of handover, still a bit of continuity, and then we see from there. It is going to be an uncertain time for everyone involved, but I would like a fair playing field. I mean, Jacques Nina has had Rassie Erasmus for the whole course of his tenure, so it's only fair that the same is afforded to either Deon Davids or Mzwandile Stick or whoever else comes in and takes over from there.
Gentlemen, that's where we're going to leave it now. Gavin, you can go back to your drink because you have left us already. And get a tripod while you're in Cape Town, please. Kevin Ritzmum Chigeliso, as well as, I always want to forget your name, Matlatse. Thank you so much for joining us right here on Sports Live. And that's where we're going to leave it this evening because Thabiso Sithole is going to come back next weekend. I'm going to be here too. But that's where we're going to leave it for tonight. Thank you so much for joining us right here on SABC News. I'm Kate Noka. Until next time, bye-bye.